All right. Well, good morning. Welcome to our morning devotions. It's Tuesday, and for those that have been following us, tonight is going to be our first night of our lectures on canonicity. And I know I advertised that I might be able to get this on Facebook Live at the same time we run it on YouTube. But we're going to just go to YouTube because I'm not so sure I'm going to be able to stream both at the same time with the resources that we have. But just a little point there. All right. This is Genesis chapter 9. We're beginning in verse, I'll start back here, verse 18. And I entitled this, The Curse of Shameless Sensuality. The Curse of Shameless Sensuality. And this passage that we're going to look at is just a very, very sad passage of God's Word. And what's going to happen here is a curse is going to be placed upon Canaan, which is the son of Ham. And the curse is that Canaan, or the descendants of Ham, are going to serve the descendants of their two brothers of Japheth and Shem. That's what's going to happen here. And the reason for this is just very, very sad. It's in the Bible. We're going to look at it here. But let me just read verse 18. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And that order is the order, if you look through the text and compare passages, that is the order of their ages. All right. Shem was the oldest, Ham's next. Shem, Ham, and Japheth would have been the youngest. That's what we have here. Uh, it says, and Ham is the father of Canaan. Now it's interesting, right there, he says that Ham is the father of Canaan, and there's no other reference here to the sons of Shem and Japheth, but because Canaan is the one that is going to be cursed, not Ham. That's very interesting. And the Canaan here is the same thing as the Canaanites, which in the text are a very broad number of people or people group. The Canaanites, as you know, would have been those that dwelt in the promised land that Joshua drove out. The Canaanites would have also anyone that dwelt in that area, the Phoenicians as well, and then down into Egypt, the Egyptians were of the Canaanites, and the Ethiopians are of the Canaanites, and so it covers if you want to talk about nationalities, it covers many subsequent to this, but there is a curse upon them, and all the Bible commentators, and I'm not saying they're all absolutely right, but they say that this curse has never been resolved, and I mean it still stands is the point, and that this curse, when you see these nations have suffered horribly under the hands of others, and that's just because of the nature of man and what happens in God's moving of empires over the millennia. So let's look at the text here. And what brings this about is just very sad because it talks about Noah. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, that he did those things that were right. But here, Noah, I mean, Luther really comes down hard on Noah here because even if it was by accident, Luther would basically argue it shouldn't have happened. Um, but let's just read the text, all right, as we have it here. And it says, These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. That is, everybody that's alive came from one of these boys, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. That's what we're looking at here. All right. And so we're starting over. Before we had Adam and Eve, and now we have Shem, Ham, and Japheth and their boys. So we went from one couple to three couples, and it's going to be these families because everybody on the other side of the flood is gone. All those that were descendants of Cain are gone. Noah was a descendant of Seth, and so from the descendants of Seth, you have these three boys. So of what we would call the good lineage here, this happens. All right, what we're going to read. And it says in verse 20, and Noah began to be a husbandman. That is, you got to work by the sweat of your brow, or because the earth is still bringing forth weeds. So He's going to be a husbandman here. He's going to get into agriculture. He has to feed himself, and that's what we have here. It says, in part of this is that he planted a vineyard. He planted a vineyard, and then it says, and he drank of the wine and was drunken. Now that's very interesting. I remember my dad when he would go through this, because everybody wants to give Noah the benefit of the doubt here. Now Luther, as I said, comes down pretty hard on him, but the idea that Noah would have willingly became drunk is foreign to what we learn about Noah. That Noah is a good guy. Now we know there's a lot of good guys that drift off. Like David was a great guy. We know he got into trouble, but no, I don't see it this way. My dad used to say this: after the flood and seasons, everything in the world changes with a fluctuation of temperatures and all of that. And now it doesn't say this. It just says that he drank of the wine that he made from his vineyard and was drunken. That is, the wine now possesses a means of intoxication. That's what's happening here. And my dad thought that that was just a result of the seasons changing. Now things are fermenting where before the flood they would not have fermented. Now I'm not so sure about that. I don't know. It doesn't say. But the fact is, for whatever reason, Noah drank of his wine. It got away from him. Not. It doesn't say he's a drunk. That's the other thing. These. I mean, people say, "Well, you split hairs." Well, you do, because when the Bible talks about us sinning, there's a difference between committing a sin. It doesn't lessen the sin, but there's a difference between committing a sin or lying, telling a lie, which everybody's culpable of, or having the reputation of being a liar or a liar, that he is a liar. Okay, that kind of thing. All right. There's a difference between stealing something and being a thief. All right, that is what they're known for. And you're all out there saying, well, you're splitting hairs on that. No, one is a habitual practice, and one is something that you slipped into, so to speak. Not that it wasn't willful, and not that you didn't know what you were doing, but it does not reflect your character. It was a momentary flaw in your decision making, and therefore you willingly fell into sin. But after you get out of it, you say, man, that's not me, and you confess it, you get it right. That's what I'm talking about. All of First John are all present tense verbs about the sinning that goes on there. All of First John is talking about habitual sin. That does not apply to Noah. Noah is not a habitual drunk. All right, he drank once and he became drunk, and I'm arguing that he did it without knowing for some reason. Uh, Something about the grapes, or just throw anything in there you want. But that he wasn't drowning out his sorrows here is the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, he's drunk, and now that he's lost his capacity because he's drunk, which is what alcohol does to you. Let me say this too, because he's drunk here. The, and I remember my dad preaching this too, and I preached it from the pulpit. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that you're not supposed to drink. It doesn't say that. There's nowhere. Matter of fact, there's places in the Bible where it says, well, you should give some wine to someone. To Timothy, Paul says, and he uses the word use, not even drink. He says, use a little wine for your stomach's sake, which means there's nothing inherently wrong with the wine, that it can be used as a medicine for Timothy's stomach problems. And when after Joseph's brothers and Joseph get together after they come back, and Joseph tells them who he is. I mean, the Bible is very clear that they enjoyed a good drink and they were merry. Proverbs says if you have someone that's got a sad heart, that a little bit of wine will make them merry. So this is what it says. But on top of all of that, the Bible is full of reasons why you should not. And part of them is that you lose your reason. I mean, I could stack up all the verses. I'm not going to do it, but all the verses on why you should not drink. So the Bible does not explicitly say you shouldn't. It even cites examples where you can't, where they did. but that doesn't give anybody license to do it. And I've never drank. I never plan on it. I mean, and at my age, when you sit down with guys my age, you say, "Yeah, I don't drink." They all go like, "Wow, that's impossible. Who still does that?" Well, I mean, I've never drank it. I've never smoked, like many of you out there. But here he got the best of him one way or another. And because he's lost his mental capacity, because now that he's drunk, it says this, and he was uncovered within his tent. That is, these days they didn't wear pants like we wear now or trousers. They wore robes, right? And they would just wrap it. It would be like a robe, like a bathrobe, and you would just wrap it around you and tie it up, and that was ordinary garment. Well, he lost his senses, and the robe would have become open. And now the word here, when it talks about uncovered, just means that his private parts are now visible. That's the point. So he's lost his senses, his robe has fell open, and he has uncovered himself. All right. And so far, we wouldn't know anything about this because this is all just happening in the privacy of Noah's tent. All right. But this is the situation. So now, with that having been the situation, we read the next verse. And Ham, the father of Canaan, which we just read up here in verse 18, Ham, his son, he says, saw the nakedness of his father. He saw that his dad was uncovered, and the what makes this bad is that he goes and tells his brothers this. And that is where the commentators and I anchor this next comment, that you see, that was nothing that should have been said to anybody. He shouldn't have been in a place, Ham shouldn't have been in a place to see this in the first place. All right. And when he sees it, he should have either covered his dad up or just left and said nothing, because this is not something you talk about. All right. That's what we're talking. When it talks about honoring your father and your mother, this is not something that sons do to their dads, is go and talk to their brothers about what I just saw. And the commentators and the guys that I really trust, the conservative guys, it's not just that he saw, but that he found pleasure in the scene. You see, there is a sinful interior to this that prompted the telling, that he found pleasure in this shame. And then I said another thing the men said is this was just on the part of Ham. This is shameless sensuality. He has no shame telling his brothers about this. Now he's talking about something he should never have been talking about, and it's his dad. All right. Total lack of respect. I mean, to say the least. All right. Not honoring your father and your mother. And you see, there's no law at this time, but everybody knows, because it's built into us, that what he was doing was wrong. All right. I mean, this gaze upon his dad. All right. That's what we're looking at here. And for dad, he shouldn't have been drinking, and I'm giving him a lot of leeway on this, as do others. But he's not in public, you see, and we're gonna read about that. He's not in public. Why Ham was even in there in the first place, I don't know. Okay, so let's keep reading. That's where we are now. We're seeing Ham is engaged in shameless sensuality, looking at his dad who is drunk and he's uncovered. All right, let's go on. It said he goes and tells his two brothers, and Shem and Japheth took a garment. I mean, they took either a blanket or something. They took or some garment or a cloak, a coat, something heavier, laid it upon both of their shoulders. Okay, now they got it on their shoulders, and they are walking into their dad's bedroom or wherever he is in the tent backwards. All right, they are not going to look on their dad. They're just looking. They're backing up. I mean, they are securing their dad's intimate or his what do I want? He's just by himself. Okay, he's just making sure that he's still by himself, so to speak. They're not looking. They back in, and with this on their shoulders, they went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And that's what the text tells us. That's what Moses writes. That's what the Holy Spirit tells us. So they back up with a blanket. They finally get to wherever their dad's laying. They just put the blanket back over them, and as a result of all of this, their faces never turned towards their dad, and they got their dad covered up. That's what we see here. All right. Now, Noah's going to wake up and find out what happens. That's what's happening now. It says this, and Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. All right. And knew this. He knew what had happened. He knew what Ham had done. All right. So he's drunk, but he's not all the way out of it. That's the point. When he got sobered up, he knew what happened. And it said this, and he said, now, and it's interesting here because it's not Ham that's being cursed, it's the firstborn of Ham. It's the Canaanites, it's Canaan. It said, and he said, cursed be Canaan, a servant's servant shall he be unto his brethren, a servant of servants. And when you see that in Hebrew, a servant of servants, or anytime you see a duplication, you've heard me say this before, verily, verily, or anything like that, woe, 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 all of that, duplications, this is the superlative. We say good, better, best. In Hebrew, they just say it again or say it 3 times. All right. It's the Song of Solomon. I think there's a passage in there where they say there's a phrase they use 4 times. All right, to talk about how wonderful marriage is. But it's just a duplication, is the point. And so this is a servant of servants. That is, you are going to be a servant of servants. That's how much of a servant you're going to be. Not just a servant of servants. All right. Let me see. A servant of servants shall you be unto his brethren. That is, that's the curse that the men still speak of in the commentaries. That there's nothing that reversed this as a result of the shamelessness of Ham and looking at his dad. And then, if you want to build on that a little more, that the servant of servants, when you look at these nationalities, the one thing that plagues these nationalities is immorality. That there is in this line, so to speak, a consistent failure, moral failure, and that is part of the reason that they are a servant of servants of others. All right, because immorality or sin ultimately makes you stupid. You've heard me say that, but it's degrading, and it takes time. It takes time away from you, and rather than investing your time in things that are important and are constructive, your focus is in something that is illicit, and so all of these things fit together, which make you a perfect candidate to be a servant of servants. And then he goes on here. He says, you're going to be a servant of servants, shall you be unto his brethren. So there's going to be one of these 3 sons and their descendants that are going to be servants of Shem and Japheth. All right. And it says, blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. It says it straight up here. And then God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. And Canaan shall be his servant. And so expressly stated, both Shem and Japheth, that Canaan, the offspring of Ham, they're gonna serve him. And if you argue that this hasn't, and I argue for a young Earth, so if you argue that this is only about 8,000 years ago or less, this is how the world is unfolded. That there are groups of people on the planet who have been oppressed, mightily oppressed, historically oppressed, and they have lived in the ancient Near East, in Egypt, in Africa. It's that in those traditions, those are where the Canaanites, all right, which we're talking about here, live, or those that came as descendants of Ham, all right. And that is just, we'd have to look at world history here to see that. But if you lay it out, the guys I read, especially these old German scholars, I mean, just brilliant men, describe it in that way. It says, so it says, and he shall And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. All right. And then after that, it says, and Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years. 50 years, and he died. And so he's 950 when he passes away. Now, what we're looking at next is, and I'll wait, that's 20 minutes. I mean, that's in the Bible. All right. There are portions in the Bible that you're out there and you're saying, you could go your whole life and never read that passage of in Genesis chapter 9. And I'm sure there's guys that have done that because they pick and choose passages, and it's a hard one. I understand that it's a hard one when you talk about one of those in the roll call of faith and what happened there. That's why I'm saying the alcohol snuck up on him more or less on Noah. But we need to read everything in the Bible. We need to read everything. We need to know what the nature of man is. The Bible tells us who we are as people, all right? And here you got two sons that did the right thing and got one that didn't. That's what you have. And they were all raised in the home of Noah. They all walked off the ark. They all had privilege beyond imagination because they're the only three boys left, and yet one of them committed this terrible sin against their dad and against God. All right? So just be mindful of that. Okay, that's enough. Well, here's the book. I don't know. They're going to be available for those in the area. They're going to be available at the community center tonight. The pastor at Calvary Bible Church, or his Calvary Bible Church, purchased these for everybody coming. So just come and focus. For those that want to watch this on stream, if there's anybody watching this, or share this. I mean, I'll try to get it on YouTube, but I mean on Facebook, but I'm going to run it on YouTube for sure. All right. If you're waiting on Facebook, it'll have to be something that I post afterward. Okay, so it'll be like an hour late. It won't be live, which I think should be fine. But I don't know if I can run both of them together, so I'm going to focus on YouTube. Okay. Well, the Lord bless you. Have a great day. And Lord willing, I'll see everybody tomorrow. Okay, we'll see you. Bye.